The time is upon us. I know you've been waiting with bated breath for me to talk about by far the most impressive car from GT7 1.55 with the most amazing combination of visual upgrades, and here's the crucial thing: if you fit the car with a wide body, then fit the WRC kind of esque rear wing, it then allows you to actually fit the Lexus LFA engine swap. Now that is absolute BS, but imagine if you could. Now in reality this car is woefully underpowered, and it's one of the very few cars in the game that has about 140 horses, and then fully built it goes up to about 170, so it's hardly any difference at all. It is a CVT style power delivery, so it feels very much like the kind of cars, as I said before, that I would hire when on holiday. It's fine for what it is, you know, a perfectly capable, normal, everyday car. They haven't added a Corolla, for example, which is one of the best-selling Toyotas of all time, and also a fantastic WRC car. That would be fairly obvious if you were going to add a normal car, but no, they added this one, which is fine, and I certainly hope it gets more potential in future because it has no engine swap and it desperately needs one. Now here I decided to put it up against Group B cars. If it were real drivers, it of course would not stand a chance against. However, going up against the AI, you can actually trounce these cars because you can basically take most corners at full throttle. In fact, over the course of the event, you'll kind of see me getting more and more confident with the car, to the point where that particular hairpin section, that sequence of hairpins back to back, you can literally, and you'll probably see it in this video, you can take every single hairpin, and I mean from entry to exit, without even lifting the throttle. In most vehicles, that would sound like a really impressive feat of performance engineering. In the case of this car, that's kind of like saying you can do a lap of the Nürburgring in a patent motor wagon without lifting the throttle. It's just so abysmally slow, you just don't need to lift your foot. It just bogs down so much on the gear ratio that it just doesn't feel like it's very cohesive between the two. Now thankfully you can drop the weight on this one. It's not crazy heavy to begin with at 1440 kilos, but you can drop it down to more like a GT1 car style 1150, at least GT1 from like the Maserati MC12 kind of era. So 1100 kilos, 175 horses. Well, if you think about it, that's not too far off a Honda Integra DC2 in its standard form. So it does have potential, and as you can see here off-road, like I said, you can do stuff with it, but it really doesn't feel like a car which is worth the time of doing stuff with it. It's a decent or half decent livery base. It has vibes of the Toyota RSC Rally Raid, as many of you have called out. Unfortunately, none of the performance of that car, and certainly nowhere near the performance of the rally version. In terms of base model numbers, you're looking at 356 points. To be honest, I think that is ridiculously generous. That is only about, what, 40 points less than the Civic? First of all, the Civic would destroy this thing in a race, even in standard versus standard forms, but more importantly, the top speed is so limited on this car, even fully built, that you end up with a car that can only do about 90, 100 miles an hour most of the time, so it really should not be that point level. The acceleration is unremarkable, the cornering is fine at best, nothing special, tuned or not, so I think it should be way lower than that. This car would actually be, kind of ironically, much better received if it felt something like the Fisker Karma used to. See, on paper the Fisker Karma is a very unremarkable car. It's got some cool ideas, some of which I'm a big fan of, but it's way too heavy, it feels underpowered, certainly these days, and it's not really that quick. It could do like 130 miles an hour, but with 400 horsepower that's not that impressive. So if you put it up against cars at that level, you don't stand a chance. With an EV in particular, and I believe this should apply to certain CVT vehicles because they're so limited on top end speed, back in GT6 you could reduce the power restrictor on that car to the point where you could get it down to like, I think it was 350 points, maybe 400 points, but here's the thing, with reduced power it still had a huge amount of torque and it still had the same kind of ratio in effect to work with, so it was still a 130 mile an hour car. If they were to make CVT vehicles like this one, unusually low on point level, still competitive but lower than you would think, certainly lower than this one, I think that could actually get it a bit of a fan base because it would feel almost like a hidden gem. Yes, it can only do 90 miles an hour, but maybe it's like 300 points or 350, fully tuned. As it happens, the only saving grace of the CHR is it's dirt cheap. The problem is, it's cheap because it's dirt. It's 26 grand and there is absolutely no reason to buy it other than just morbid curiosity or being a completionist, I guess. If you want to make some liveries, slap on some weird aero options which they give it, then sure, and I'm a bit apprehensive on the idea of a motor swap. If you could drop, you know, like a 2JZ engine into it, or I don't know, maybe the Civic type Type R motor, whatever, then sure, on paper it does have potential, but the problem is it would depend on if that then allows you to fit a race transmission. Because if you've given this a 500-600 horsepower engine but still have that original CVT, well, it's still going to bog down and it's not going to feel anywhere near as quick as it should. In fact, if the ratios are unchanged, you're going to basically have a 500 horsepower car that can only do 90 or 100 miles an hour. And as fun as it sounds to launch up to 90 miles an hour in a couple of seconds and then have that as your like party trick, it's just such a limiting factor on a car like this. So if you are going to use it, number one, only use it in basically standard form or even restricted form, so the point level is even lower, for super low level career mode or online events. The second option, if you're something of a masochist, is to take it off-road, I guess, but the races will take longer than they need to. If you fancy a bit more of a challenge, I guess, then go for it. You'll definitely want to drop by the channel tomorrow though, because unless any interesting other news drops in the meantime, I'm talking about something regarding the future of Gran Turismo, a Gran Turismo 8, if you will, related piece of information, which some of you might have missed. And of course we talked about Forza coming to the PlayStation. Now we've got not really Gran Turismo's response, but also some other side of the table news, if you will. Both the future of Forza and Gran Turismo are making advances, so stick around for that news tomorrow. Of course, I'll see you then, and for now, thanks for watching.